For those people who don't know me, I'm Andrew Lee. I've been a member of the small firm forum for a while and have my own practice. I just moved into this beautiful office you see behind me in Berkeley. So happy to be out of my home office, my pandemic era office. So Kirsten and I thought it would be fun to do this presentation. We're both adopters of SketchUp, but we've taken it farther than a lot of people, than most people have taken SketchUp. We actually have tried to adopt SketchUp and its companion program, which is called Layout, to take SketchUp models and develop them all the way into presentation drawings and even submittal drawings. And I think, well, speaking for myself, I won't speak for Kirsten. I started using SketchUp like a lot of people do because it's very easy and intuitive to use, and then saw layout, images of layout, what drawings people had done with layout, and thought that looks really great. And it's just, to me, it's a lot more fun than, for those of you who are in the CAD world still, as opposed to Revit. Most of my career was spent using CAD, and I just never really enjoyed it that much. I felt like, you know, you're struggling a lot with the program as opposed to working on what you're designing. So we thought it would be fun to kind of share our enthusiasm for it. I'm going to present on some basics of SketchUp, and then I'll hand it over to Kirsten for her a little bit, and then I'll finish up with some layout stuff. We'll both show layout stuff. And many of you may use SketchUp to some degree, and this may all be kind of stuff you already know, and I hope you'll bear with us if that's the case. I think towards the end, even for those of you who have used SketchUp, you know, the material we'll get to at the end is pretty interesting and less likely that any of you know how to use it this way. So let me kind of launch into things, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to use the handy share screen feature, and we'll get going. So I hope everybody can see my screen here. Mm-hmm. You may be thinking, wait a minute, that doesn't look like a SketchUp, that looks like AutoCAD. And you're right, this is AutoCAD. And what I'd like to do is show you a really simple way you can use SketchUp with kind of a limited investment of learning if you are still in the CAD world. So here's a CAD plan. And this probably looks familiar to you. This is a project in my office right now. It's a floor plan. And you can see that there's, I'm sure this is very similar to what you may look like in your own office, dashed lines indicating demolition conditions, you know, hatched walls showing proposed conditions. The kitchen is a brand new kitchen. And you may be at this stage of kind of schematic design and you have a floor plan that you and your clients like, but your clients may say, hey, you know, I'm having trouble kind of imagining what this will look like. And that's where SketchUp comes in. And in fact, you may actually think, you may look at this plan and think, well, gosh, I think this is going to be a good plan. But you may want to see, well, like, what does this wall look like? Or your client may say, hey, can I see what this wall will look like with the refrigerator and the pantry cabinets? I want to know what kind of storage is going to be, or I want to know, like, you know, what will the cabinet layout look like? So that's where SketchUp comes in. So I'm going to switch now to getting into SketchUp. And I'm opening up my SketchUp document. Now, this is your standard SketchUp universe. This is essentially model space in SketchUp. And intuitively, I'm sure you know what you're looking at. We have a ground plane here. We have an X, a Y, and a Z axis. We have a horizon line. And this is basically where all the action takes place in SketchUp models. And before I start modeling, I thought I'd show you the three basic ways that you move around in a SketchUp model. And you can see these tools here at the top of the screen. And one way to move around is called orbit. And that's this button right here. Just as in most CAD programs, you can create shortcuts on your keyboard, so you don't need to use the buttons if you don't always want to keep pointing to them. For me, the keyboard shortcut is O for orbit. And you see, once I type O, my cursor changes to that little symbol with the arrows rotating. And I can press my mouse button and then move my mouse around, and I can move around the universe and look around the scene. The second way to move around in SketchUp, in the SketchUp world, is pan, which is just like it operates in AutoCAD. And you can see there's that little hand there, and you can see it says pan. My shortcut is H for type H. You can see your arrow turns into a little hand. And again, you press down on your mouse key and then scroll around with your mouse, and you can look around in your universe. And finally, the last way to move around in this world is zoom, which is, again, just like in AutoCAD, only in 3 dimensions. And you can see the magnifying glass is zoom, and my shortcut is Z. And I just type Z, and then I use my scroll wheel, and wherever you're pointing to with your cursor, that's where you zoom in. So if I want to look at the horizon over at this red axis, I point there and I zoom in towards that area. Okay. So that is the way you navigate around in the SketchUp world. And like most CAD programs, SketchUp gives you the ability to import CAD files from other programs. So I'm going to go to my file menu and go to import and select that CAD file that I just showed you, that floor plan. And I'm going to click on import. And you can see that SketchUp imports that entire floor plan as an object. Select that object on the ground plane. And this is one way you can start building a model. Okay, so there's my kitchen that I showed you at the beginning. Now, the basic way that you model in SketchUp is really the one tool that you use most often is this tool right here, which is called shapes. And in fact, you can create different shapes. You can create a circle or a polygon, but really 90% of the time you use this rectangle shape. And you're basically building solids, unlike in CAD, which you're basically creating line work. In SketchUp, you're creating solids. And the way I normally start building a model is by starting with a floor plane. So I use this rectangle tool, and you can see that when I click on that tool, my pointer turns to a little rectangle with a pencil on it.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay. Is someone in and wants to say something?
No, I just muted. So
oh, okay.
I muted the person.
Oh, okay, great. So you can see that that's now got a pencil on it. And one of the great things about SketchUp is that it often infers what you want to do. So if I hover over one of these lines, you can see that it's locked on that line. And it's inferring that you want to start building your rectangle on that line. So I can go to the corner of my house here, hover over it, and click. Now it's starting that rectangle there, and I can go all the way to, I can go all the way to this corner, say if I wanted to build my floor plane. Now what you've created is a rectangle with a face and 4 edges. You can see there's 4 edges on the 4 sides of the rectangle. And what you want to do to create a solid is to use another really fun SketchUp tool, which is called push-pull, which is essentially the same thing as extruding, which I think you can do like if you're working in other CAD programs. In my setup, my shortcut is P. And you see, once I type P, my cursor turns into that little rectangle with an arrow on it. And when I hover over the face gets selected with that little pattern. And if I click on my mouse button and move my mouse up, I start extruding up, and I can zoom around it while I'm doing it, or I can extrude down. In this case, I want to extrude down because I don't want my rectangle to cover my plan because I want to keep using that. So extrude down, and I can extrude just using my mouse to like any depth I wanted to. But let's say I want to be exact and I want to make it a certain depth. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a dialog box, and you can see it says distance. So while I'm actively extruding my rectangle, I can let go of my mouse. It's still waiting for some final input from me. And I can go to my keyboard and type 12 for 12 inches. Now that's a 12-inch thick object. However, it's still a bunch of faces and edges. And the problem with that is that if I was to grab around this, let's say if I was to window around this, and it's the same as in AutoCAD, if I window around from the right, let's see, if I window around from the right, I'm not going to select that. You can see that I've selected these faces and these edges, but not this face. I've only selected the faces and edges that I windowed around. And then if I want to move it, sorry, that's not a good example, actually. If I want to move that, you can see that the rectangle gets all weird because these are all individual objects, faces and edges. So a key task in SketchUp is to always work in groups. And to group this set of faces and edges, you triple click on it. So you hover over any part of this. Double clicking will select that face and the edges, and triple clicking will select all of them. You can see all of the faces and edges in that volume are selected. And then I group them, which is here. Now this is a single grouped object, and you can't select any of them individually. If you select any of this part of this, you select the entire group. And now I have my floor. And you use that exact same technique to build all your walls. And what I just showed you literally can get you like 75% of the way to getting an entire model of this floor plan. So if I zoom in here and want to build a wall, again, I go to rectangle. Let's say I want to build this wall that goes along the exterior wall of this kitchen. I start here, and I can go all the way down here if I want. Make that rectangle, and then extrude up for the wall. And if I know that I have an 8-foot high ceiling, I know my wall is 8 feet high, and I can just start extruding. And then in the lower right-hand corner here, I can type 8 feet. Okay, so there's my wall. And again, I don't ever want to have just free faces and edges. I always want to work in groups. So I triple click on this, and my shortcut for grouping is Control-G. And now I have a group that's a wall. Let's say I want to build this wall here that's separating the kitchen from the dining room. I click into that group, and I can click on my pencil, which is to create a line. And you can see a pencil appears. And I can zoom in right where that wall is. And you can see that SketchUp infers that I want to start the line right there at that intersection. I click my mouse. And another handy thing about SketchUp is it makes an inference. If what you're trying to do is anywhere near an axis, it'll go to that axis. And you can see that right now, the blue axis, when I'm kind of going up, it infers, oh, you want to make that line straight up. And once it does that, I can lock that inference by pressing Shift. And then I can move my pencil wherever I want to. And it still infers that I want to create that line going straight up. and I go to the other line, or the top edge there. And now I've cut that face into two pieces separated by that edge. And I can make another line here in the same way. And now I have a face there. And I switch to my push-pull tool. And I can push-pull all the way to that where that wall ends. Okay. And that literally is how you would build the entire floor plan of this model. Let me show you a couple other things. One is I'll just show you how I build a window. So you have a couple windows here at the sink. You can actually see the line work of the trim that I have in my CAD file. And the way I'll cut a hole in the walls for the windows is to click into the wall object, use the tape measure tool, start with this edge of this wall, and you can see a guideline appears as I'm dragging my tape measure across the wall. It's inferencing that I want to move it along the green axis. And I go to that edge of that window, and it creates that guideline. I can do the same thing for the other edge of the window. And I can do the same thing for the top and bottom of the windows. If I know that my window has the standard head height of 80 inches, I can drag this up, go to my length box, and type 80. If I know the sill is at 42, let's say, same thing. Now I have the outline of my window, and I type R for rectangle, draw on the face of the wall, finish the rectangle, and you can see it's basically created a separate face. I use my push-pull tool again. I could pull it out this way if there was something sticking out of the wall, but I know I want to cut a hole in the wall, so I go the other way, and it infers that I want to end it on the opposite face. I click, and there's my hole. I can get rid of these guidelines by just windowing around them and deleting. Okay. And you can do that same technique for all your windows, for all your door openings, whatever, things that you have going on your wall. I think the final thing I'll show you is the concept of groups or components. You can see all these standard features in a kitchen. There's a range here, there's a refrigerator here, there's a sink here. Well, probably not surprising to know that you can download a lot of these things from the internet, or you can build them yourself and save them as separate files and then insert them to your current model, so you don't have to constantly be rebuilding these. So I have a model of a window that I insert here, and there it is. And you can see that because my cursor is over the ground, it's inferring that I want to put this here. Well, I know I actually want to put it in that opening. So I can go over to here, locate the corner of this window here. Another tool that's handy to use is called Rotate, which is this tool right here. My shortcut for rotate is Q. And again, you can see that SketchUp is inferring that I want to rotate the active object on the plane of what I'm hovering over. If I was hovering over this wall, it would think I want to rotate it in a plane that aligns with that wall. So if I did this is my starting point for my rotation. You can see it starts rotating the window, parallel with the wall. But I don't want that. I want it parallel with this horizontal plane. So I select that. That's the beginning of my angle. And I can type in here, it says angle, and you can type in here 90 degrees. You can see that my model is not the right size. So I can click into this model, and I can select only the edges and faces that I want to move to expand it. So you can see I've selected all the edges on this side of the model. I can zoom in on it to be accurate. Click on M for move. Click on that endpoint and drag it to the side of the opening. And I can do the exact same thing for the top of the window. Click on M for move. You can see that SketchUp infers I want to move it down along the Z-axis, and I can go to the opening. Here we go. Now the last thing is you can see that the window is projecting out of the wall, which I don't want. So I can just grab the object, type M for move it this way. SketchUp infers I want to move it along the red axis. I lock it, and then I hover over the location I want it to move to. In this case, the surface of the wall. And there's my window. And the last thing I'll do is, just for fun, I'll just insert a refrigerator. There's my refrigerator. In this case, I do want to set it down on the ground plane, so that's the right location. I can type Q for rotate. Rotate it 90 degrees. And I can move it to, where it should be, and you can always fine tune it, but it's inferring I want to move it on the red axis. I can move it to the line of the wall, and then I can do that again so that it's in the correct location for the refrigerator. Okay, so those are the basic tools, and really with what I've just shown you, you could build the entire model of this, really of the entire house. And so I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to turn things over to Kirsten. And then I will pick up when Kirsten's done.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Thanks, Andy. That was an excellent introduction to everything. And I need to get in here. Okay, so I'm going to do a little jump. So I have used, let's just maybe do a quick introduction. So I've used SketchUp really for small 3D models to create some rooms that I couldn't really show very well in 2D, and to create shadow studies. And I didn't build this particular model, but the person that built it I saw showed up today. Randy, hi. So I want to quickly show you how to create a, I'm not going to show you how to do it. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. I think Andy's been good at showing how to import DWG files. So this is a Google snapshot of an area where my house is located. This is in Berkeley. You always have to create shadow studies in Berkeley. And so I want to suggest, as a business owner, if you haven't done this, like, this is a good thing. You can have somebody do it if you just want to get some outside help. So like Randy did this for me. So you geolocate this plan, which means you grab a Google snapshot of the area where your house is located and just bring that into SketchUp. And I'm not going to show you how to do it right now because I'm too nervous, but it's very simple. And then you go into wherever you created your files of the house and import the DWG files of that. And that's what this scene called pasted elevation shows. So it shows you the site plan, and then you just set your elevations, rotate them the way Andy just showed how you rotated the window. You can rotate your elevations, you pop them together, and they'll create a solid face where the elevation is. Now the roof, you have to, you can draw a plane that is not orthogonal to create the roof shape. And then you can use the tools. Let me just get rid of this here. The scenes tools and the shadow tools. And for some reason, I don't have the shadows open. Be helpful. Shadows. So here's the shadows palette. For the shadows, of course, you want to look at the house from vertically from above. But I'm going to time this to make sure I'm not running way over here. You go into the top view. And then in the shadow settings, you select a time, a day, and a time of day. So here's your day, your date, 12/21. So this would be December 21st, and the date, the date, the time of the day that you need to take the shadow study for. You type that in, and SketchUp will show you the specific shadow at that time of day. And so this is the existing building with the existing shadow outlined. And then you bring in the DWG files of your proposed design and paste them. They look like this. So the proposed design sits on top of the existing design. It's bigger now. And then you can see the projection from one shadow to the next. I guess I should have explained how to create scenes in SketchUp. Any model that you draw is in itself a scene. So when you start, there's always going to be one tab at the top, and that is your scene. You can save that and create a new scene just by clicking up here and say add. So now I have two scenes that look exactly the same. If I want to do the shadow study here, I could say, now I'm going to, like, I pick a different time, and you can do that by using this cursor or by typing in the time of day. Let's say you want to do, I don't know if this does 15. Oh no, of course it doesn't, it's 3 p.m. 3 p.m. And then if you want to save the scene, you just say update here. Now you have a new scene. You can do this for shadows or for any model views that you want. So I just wanted to show this quickly. I have another like a later development of this same shadow study. So this one shows you the shadows in April of the existing and proposed. That's existing and proposed, existing and proposed. And then if you transfer that into a PDF file, so you print this different snapshots and create a PDF, and then you can bring it into AutoCAD. Then what it looks like is this file here. So the April shadow studies that I just showed are at the bottom here. And then you can line up, so the morning, midday, and evening to represent the shadows for the different days. It's actually pretty quick, and you get a model that at the same time can help you with other things that you might want to work with in client presentations. Okay, so that was the first thing. Then the second thing I want to show you is I am pretty new to SketchUp, and I decided based on hearing Andy's story that I really wanted to use this for a new project and do a project in SketchUp from the start. And I can show you kind of what happens when you do that without, knowing 100%, knowing totally what, not being fully familiar with it. So I had this new house that I was going to work on, and I decided that this would be a good way to just test drive it and just deal with however long it takes me to build that, and to just see whether this is going to be more efficient or less than using AutoCAD and then doing 3D modeling when I needed it. So I started out, I did the schematic design with hand drawings, but then I went straight into SketchUp and I drew the plans in SketchUp. And this is a floor plan of the house of my first design. And then I extruded it up. So this is a section through the model. The floor plan shows up as a horizontal section through the model, just like what we normally envision. We think of a plan as a section at 42 inches, but it really is a section at 42 inches. And then this is a section at the second floor, and it cuts through the roof here. So, and again, these are my individual scenes. So, the model is really there. I just laid a section plane there to cut through it. And then I have, this is my working perspective, and that's where I developed it. I got really into building my furniture, and you can look into the house. It's pretty graspable and relatively intuitive to do, really only with the tools that Andy showed. Just another perspective. And then I set up elevations. So elevation views from the different angles. And I have some sections. And this is, so with the sections, I had to figure out how to show the section cut so that it makes some sense. And it's easy to read. So it's really in development. So then what happened is the clients changed how they wanted the design to go. And so I redesigned it. This is I had to kind of rebuild it because there were too many changes to just go ahead with it. And so the floor plans developed further. That's a roof plan. That's a plan of the upper level. In this case, it shows shadows. Okay. I can't get to my scenes up there if I'm in full plan view. Lower level floor plan. And then some perspective. So you see this is a much more compressed plan. So the downside was that I could not just modify the model. I could modify this part, I could reuse it. This one I had to rebuild. And again, this has, so I'm orbit. I built the walls and everything. And I got into using siding, which is just to put, can put textures on the exterior of the building to pretty quickly get something that looks more like a house. This is also geolocated and actually built on the terrain, which you can see when we go to the rear and my last. So here I have the terrain is in the model. This is the Google terrain.
Left of the kitchen stove. I
So
cleaned out.
I'm just muting people when they unmute. And this is the, so you can see that there's a slight slope here. That's because of the slope of the terrain. And we're higher up on this edge of the house, and then it slopes down. So I'm gonna have to learn more how to work with the terrain. There are ways to do that, and I've done that before, but I'm not good enough at it right now to show you how to do that. And I think that'd be maybe a little bit more advanced. Okay, so that happened, and then the clients found out that they thought they could build anywhere on their property, but they actually have to build within this square here, which meant that I had to scrap this model and do yet a third one, which is this model here. And can you guys mute yourselves? Okay, so this is now we're actually set. We're finally the design is set. This is what the house is going to be like. This is the whole lot with the building here and the driveway. I brought in the survey as a DWG file, and it also has the Google terrain in it, which I can show you later. So I'm showing you the progression of my scenes are what I needed to create a plan set for it. So the first one was an overview of the whole plot plan. Now this is my roof plan showing the driveway. These red things are fire trucks. I have to show that this can be accessed with a fire truck. And now I did something because I've kind of learned from having to redo my model every time they made changes. And I'm actually have the floor plans as 2D layers in there. And so this is actually just my floor plan, my 2 floor plans at different heights in the bottom of the model, and the model is turned off for this particular view. And this way I can make more quickly changes on here without having to remodel the whole interior. And then this is the upper level floor plan. And then I have elevations, and because they're 2 building portions aren't perpendicular to each other, I have several, so now the house is oblique and the garage is perpendicular. And I'm just gonna move around here pretty quickly. Those are parallel views of the model, which makes them elevations. And I have one attempt to a section, and I didn't develop this further yet, so it doesn't look right. This is an approach to the house and a perspective with some terrain on it, which helps me, shows me where I need to model to get this to work properly with what's existing. And I can show you the Google terrain with it. So here you can see the gray is my drafting plane that I'm working on. And then it cuts into the Google terrain because the terrain, of course, has a slope to it and my drafting plane doesn't. Okay, and I've got some utilities floating above because I don't really know yet how to do certain things. So they're floating here. So the last thing I want to show you is now, how do I get these scenes into a way that I can plot them, show them. And for that, we need a different program, which is called Layout. It comes with SketchUp, and this is my layout file. So this is kind of like when you use AutoCAD, it's the paper space. You can compare, can look at it that way. And you just bring the different scenes in as like viewports. So here they are. Those are my scenes, roof plan that I just showed you. and the floor plans and the elevations. Just quickly through it. They get labeled in here, just like you can do in AutoCAD. So when we look at the floor plan, so we have, call outs and dimensions, and all of this is done in layout. And then when I print it, it looks, oops, that's what the opposite of I meant to be doing. If you get a PDF of it, this is my PDF of the, the site plan, and you just print it out like this, and then you can submit it. And there are some templates that you can use for your title block. So you can see I just made it into DD. I'm still happy that I tried it. I think it's a good way, and I'm going to work more into that direction. And I'm going to hand it back over to Andy. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Kristen. I think what I'm going to finish up with is kind of, it's essentially like a simple version of what Kristen just showed you. And basically, this will be like, okay, you've seen this really great thing that Kristen has done. And this is going to be a simple kind of demonstration of how she did those views on her model. So bringing us back to that humble kitchen that I was showing you, here's a more developed model that I built earlier for today. And you can see I've added some other things. I've added the existing stairs that are in this house. I did a little bit of work at the back of the house. There's going to be a little breakfast nook there, and so on. So if we're interested in this wall, say our client said, oh, I want to see what that wall looks like with the refrigerator, and I want to know I have enough space for my coffee maker or whatever. There's our developed wall. I've added cabinetry. I've actually added a crown molding. I'm suggesting that the doors on these cabinets are typical shaker doors. Now the question is, how do I get this view to a way that I can show it to the clients? Well, one thing that I've discovered this year is that literally I could be doing this with my client. I could be having a Zoom with them and showing them in this way. But sometimes, CAD, as you all know, CAD programs can be kind of cold, and, clients can sometimes get the wrong idea. They think if it's in CAD, well, this must be what it's going to look like. And I often like to draw by hand. So this is one of the things that I've done with SketchUp is I will build a model to roughly this point and then print it out and throw a piece of trace paper over it and do a hand sketch, which I like to do. So, and Kristen referred to cutting sections like for a floor plan, and I'll show you how to do that. Here's our tool button, and you see section plane here. When you click on that, you can see that my cursor all of a sudden has this section plane icon. And right now it thinks I want to cut a section looking down, i.e. a floor plan. But if I was to move to this wall, it would infer that I want to make the section cut relative to that wall on the same plane. And if I was to move to this wall, it would say, oh, I think Andrew must want to cut the section this way. So for example, if I hovered over this wall, locked that inference, and then cut my section here, it asks for a name of the section and a symbol. You can see I have a section going through the kitchen in the short direction. But that's not the section I want. I want a section looking at this wall, which is what my client was interested in. So I infer that I want to look that way. I hover over, let's say right there, and there's my wall. And let's say I want to, one thing that it's not only good for doing like a hand sketch, but it's also good for me, like just to explore what things will look like. I mean, we're all designers, but sometimes we aren't 100% sure what something will look like in 3 dimensions. So I'll do this. one thing I suggested to my client was, hey, why don't we get rid of some of this wall and open up the stair to the kitchen so that when you're coming down the stair, you know, maybe this wall is kind of a partial height wall. So you could click on this, you know, draw a line here, and then start getting rid of that wall. Delete this stuff. And then you can literally kind of rotate into this space and kind of see, well, what would that look like if I was coming down that stair? So that's another way you can use this very simple, kind of just this simple stage of modeling. I mean, you can, you know, forget about doing layout. You can just kind of model what you've got going and look at it in 3D, as opposed to struggling with it in CAD. I mean, I guess maybe people in Revit, you can do this with Revit, but in any case, this is another way you can use this kind of simple model. But for now, I want to create like a nice, loose, kind of warm hand sketch of this elevation of this kitchen. So I can create a scene like what Kirsten was talking about. Let's see. I can create a scene, which is, where is that in the tools, Kirsten?
You can just right click on, you can just
here.
click on the existing scene and it'll let you make a new one.
Okay. Oh yeah, good. Okay. Oh. Okay. Okay. So there's my scene. I'm just gonna save this. And I'm gonna rename this scene. Kitchen elevation. Okay. And then I'm going to save this SketchUp file because I'm done with it. And then I'm going to open up layout. And Kirsten showed you her layout files. And so my screen will look very similar to what Kirsten just showed you, but this is basically your starting point for a SketchUp file. And you can see I've got a blank sheet of paper. This is formatted to be 11 by 17. So this is more of a presentation drawing. And you can see I've got a little title block here, a space for title, you know, spaces for scale and date. And normally my client's name goes here, my little logo. And you have a bunch of palettes to work with here. I'm not going to go through all these because it's beyond the scope of today, but they're all pretty self-explanatory. And similar to what you would do in AutoCAD with XREFing, you insert your model here, and I click on the model, and there it is. And if I go to this palette that says SketchUp model, and I click on this, you can see it says, here's the name of the file. Let's see. The name of the scene. There's all different ways you can control this. But essentially, at this point, I'm done. And I can go to my file command menu, print onto my 11 by 17 printer, and throw a piece of trace paper over this and do my little warm kind of sketch. Now, I didn't do one for this kitchen, but I thought I would show you a couple examples of how I've done this in the past. Here's another model. This is a project I did a couple of years ago that involved renovating both bathrooms in a house. This is the upstairs bathroom designed, and this is the downstairs bathroom. And I set up these two views. The clients were great clients and they were very engaged and detail oriented. They wanted to see some views. They wanted to see, well, what would it look like with the wall tile and, et cetera, et cetera. So I set up these views, then printed them out onto layout. And here's my scene for the upstairs bathroom. And you can see this is a 2-page layout document. This is the page palette. I'm on the second page. It shows second floor shower view. If I want to see the first page, I just click on it. And there's the first floor shower view. And my warm little sketch for the first floor bathroom is that. So you can see here's the printout. I just printed that out on my printer and threw a piece of trace paper over it and did this little warm sketch. For the second floor, I did the same thing. And I find that clients really like this. These, you all and I can kind of read this and understand, well, this is an idea and it's not really written in stone and blah, blah, blah. And clients don't necessarily understand that. And I think, oh, it's a computer drawing. It must be, this is how it's going to look. So I like doing things like this. I like drawing the towel on the towel bar, and I like kind of this loose feel. So I will often do this for clients. I'll just do a couple other examples, and I won't go to the same level of detail. But here's an example for another kitchen. And I was actually doing this in a much more, I wasn't bothering to put this on a title block. Depending on who your clients are, they don't need to have the kind of the super format. I was trying to work some things out. So I was, I'm trying to get more loose as in my work process. So just kind of sketching out ideas. This was actually nice because for this project, we were working with an interior designer, and she fed me these colors and said, Andrew, can you put these in your SketchUp model? And can I see what this looks like? So I did this for her. I dropped in a model of some light fixtures, flooring, and the final project actually came out looking pretty similar. So that's the project as it was built. So that was nice. Let's see. So I'm going to finish, and then I think Kristen and I are both happy to take questions. I have taken some projects all the way through to permit drawings. So I'll show you something that I just finished yesterday, actually. This is a full set of permit drawings for a project in Oakland. And this was basically done with all the techniques that we've talked about today. I think it's safe to say that anything you can do in AutoCAD, you can do in SketchUp and Layout. So cover sheets, Total 24 documentation, site plan. This is located so north is up, the shadows are accurate. I've dropped in some existing photographs for the planning department. Demo plans, main floor and second floor. Demo conditions shown dashed, typical convention. New plans. I'll just zoom in on this really quick. So, anything that you need to see in AutoCAD or in a construction drawing, a submitted drawing, you can generate in Layout in SketchUp. Elevation drawings, shadows. The shadow feature is really nice. In my many years of working in AutoCAD, I would do these by hand, which is a pain in the butt. And this is done automatically with the technique that Kirsten showed you. Even to the details, this becomes more, this is sort of the leading edge of my learning process with SketchUp and layout. This becomes a little bit more work, and I can get in the ins and outs of what are the drawbacks of this software versus CAD or Revit or whatever. But suffice it to say, you can make it work. It just takes figuring out what's the proper workflow to get this to look like this. But it's all very doable. Schedules, lighting plans. Maybe the final thing I'll show you is a fairly detailed model that's pretty much close to going into kind of permit drawings. This is a project that I'm working on right now. So this is a full house modeled with an ADU. You can see there's a little roof sticking out there. That's obviously won't be in the drawing. And then a bunch of different scenes set up for the different floors. E is my abbreviation for existing, D is my abbreviation for demo, N is my abbreviation for new. So I can rapidly click on a scene and say, those are all the first floor conditions that are existing to remain. Those are all the first floor conditions that are new. I can turn on the proper layer to see both at the same time. I can turn on the demo layer so I can see the walls that we're proposing to remove. And so on. Same thing for second floor, which is kind of under the sloping roof. This, I don't think Kristen would disagree with me. To get to this point does take a lot of work. This is kind of, probably a couple hundred hours of learning to get to this point. But the version of doing this is, if you're willing to spend a couple days on a weekend, you can get to this point. And I think I'll stop there, and maybe we can take questions, Kirsten. Kirsten, how do we want to do this as far as questions?
People should ask them.
Yeah. I don't know if people want to, there's a thing where you can raise your hand, or people want to put something in the chat box.
Art has a hand up.
Who does?
Art Clark.
Art Clark. Okay. Do we have to unmute him?
No, he did it.
Okay.
Hi, Kristen and Andrew. Thanks for the presentation. That was wonderful. So I'm right at the point where I've just spent a couple of days on a weekend, and so I'm really at the very beginning. So it looks like you both have the SketchUp Pro 2020. Is that the recommended program for architects?
It is, yeah. If the Pro package gives you the opportunity. Pro basically includes layout.
Oh, good.
If you get the lower cost version, you only get SketchUp, so you don't have the opportunity to bring it into Paperspace, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is you can't import DWGs unless you have the import or export. I don't know if you can export DWGs without the Pro version.
Oh, that's good to know.
Okay. So I'm learning on the freebie version, but I probably should just bite the bullet and go ahead and get Pro.
Yeah, and they
what do
only
you?
have subscriptions
I'm
now.
sorry. Go ahead.
They only have subscriptions now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And is there a rendering add-on that you would recommend, or are you at that point? I know you you do your warm sketches, Andrew, and it looks like you're doing your presentation drawings and layout. But Kristen, do you have a recommendation for a rendering program that really takes these to another, level of finish?
I haven't used one. There's Shader Light is one that I've used, and I just actually, the Merritt College in the landscape department they teach classes there in SketchUp. They're like $140 for a semester with evening classes once a week. And they just had a presentation that I could share with you because she goes into rendering software's add-ons there are different levels from very simple to very sophisticated, like, with glass and like floating water, reflecting waters and stuff. So it just depends on the power of your computer, what you can use.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to get information. Thank you.
Yeah, just to chime in, I know there's quite a few different rendering add-ons you can buy, and I think the lowest cost ones are on the order of just a few $100s, and apparently the results are very good.
Okay.
I have not tried them, but yeah, apparently they're very good.
Great, thank you. I just put my my email in the chat.
Cool.
If you want to share anything with me.
V-Ray. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great.
Mercedes, you're muted. Mercedes, you're muted.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you. Hi. I wasn't, I may not absorb something obvious here, but is it the case that if you make a change in plan and you've already made a model, it will automatically edit that model? I have a feeling no, since you had to redo your work. Okay. So it's not like the Vectorworks 3D or the Revit, where if you edit the plan and you've made the model, it will then edit the model and the elevations and everything to reflect that.
Well, I think the answer, Mercedes, is it really depends.
Okay.
Kirsten, I think because of that house that she's showing, and she's going through this process where there's a lot of revisions, I think she kind of defaulted back to just making revisions in a 2D object.
I see. Okay.
But the power of SketchUp is that you can modify the model, and the scenes automatically update, obviously, because it's cutting through the model that you're editing. Yeah.
Okay. And Andy, is that how you're currently working?
Pretty much. One of the things that is a challenge is if you're doing schematic design and you're testing out, say, 3 significantly different plans, you have to figure out how to organize your model so that you don't have to, once your clients select a particular option, you don't have to do a lot of surgery to your model to get rid of the options that you are rejecting, for example. And it's just a matter of figuring out a workflow. There's like any CAD program, there's probably 3 or 4 different ways to do anything. And it's just a matter of finding the way to do it that works with how you work as a designer.
I'll finish up, but the design, both sets of drawings look really great. Do you anticipate, Andy, and maybe you're already finding that this will save you time? You'll not only will do the drawings look great and they have great illustrative characteristics, for us and for the client, but in the sense of being able to change a floor plan and have the model update and sort of quote do the elevations, which I see that Vectorworks can do. Does it have that level, and do you think that will then save you time?
The level of plans and elevations and building sections, definitely it saves you a lot of time.
Okay.
The place where it starts becoming more time consuming is doing details. At least that's what I found. There's a guy who's based up in the Sierras who has a book out on SketchUp, and he has a certain workflow where he builds a detail library that's all in 3D. Just like in CAD, when I was working in CAD in firms, we had detail libraries at different scales, whatever the proper scale was to show a detail. And you just either, you do DD insert into your CAD file. You can do the exact same thing with SketchUp, and you can actually show your detail as a 3D detail. So for example, like a wall construction, you can show, you know, building paper, lath, stucco, etc. But it all takes time. You know, it's not, it doesn't do the work for you. I mean, it saves time in certain things, and in other things, it takes more time to build up the library.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kurt, I think you're next. So can I ask you if you can respond to this? I'm not sure if this is actually true that you can modify a floor plan and it updates the model at the same time. I think when you model in 3D, you change the model and it'll and that updates your elevation and plans at the same time.
Who did you want to?
Kurt.
Did you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I don't have that wrong, because you do Revit, so you would know.
So, yeah, well, okay, that's going to lead to my question. So I am not very experienced with SketchUp. I sort of hopped over it. I went from AutoCAD, I hopped over to Revit, which I find from the little bit I see of SketchUp, Revit seems way more cumbersome, but also more powerful. Like I'm getting the payoff, I think, for making myself learn it over the past several years. So in Revit, everything's parametric in every direction. So your floor plans, are just horizontal sections of your model. You can change something on the plan, it'll change in the model, it'll change everywhere. You can change it in the 3D view, you can change it in an interior perspective, and it'll change everywhere, which is, I love about it. And I was actually going to ask you guys if that breaks down in the two program aspect of SketchUp and layout. Like when you commit to layout, if you realize you need to change something, can you work on your model in a layout view and have it change back to the model? Or do you have to go, oh darn, and open the model and fix it and then re-import it to layout? Because in Revit, you're sort of always, it's more the model space, paper space idea, like wherever you are, you can change it. If you're in a flat view, a paper view like layout, you can work on the model there too.
I don't think so.
You can access the model through layout, but I haven't done it. So I don't know that I don't know if I go into the model, if it then goes into SketchUp inside of layout, like when you do it in AutoCAD, you can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then, but the modifications, you really make the modifications in the model. You don't modify a floor plan and it modifies the model for me. Like I can't move a wall and then assume that SketchUp knows, let's say the wall is under a sloped ceiling, it'll adjust the height of that wall to, it wouldn't do that. I would have to change the model and that will change everything else.
Yeah, it seems like the simplicity is great, but also you pay for it and having to go back and fix things manually. Like Revit is more complicated to move around in, but it's kind of elastic. Like if that wall, for example, knows it's attached to the roof, if I already told it these three walls attached to this roof, I could change the walls, the roof, this roof slope, the walls, they'll all stay attached. They'll recalculate and maintain those relationships.
Okay.
And so one other quick question about parametrics. So Andy, I noticed or Andrew, sorry, I've known you too long. I knew you when you were Andy. Andrew, you mentioned schedules. So are those reading from the model, or are you just writing a schedule in layout, or are you saying, go tell me how many windows I have and how many of this kind of object?
I'm just writing the schedule in layout, Kurt. Yeah, it's not, although, I mean, Kirsten and I we're not gurus by any means, and there actually may be a function where you can populate a schedule. But no, that's just, it's a relatively easy thing to construct, but yeah, I'm doing that manually.
Okay. And nice sketches, always. I love seeing the handwork. And Kirsten, great shadow studies too. Those are cool.
I think Rachel is not. Rachel's had her hand up, Kirsten.
Kurt actually asked my question, but I have to agree with him. I was thinking like when Kirsten, when you said, I thought your guys' presentation was fantastic, but like when you said you had to rebuild the model, I was just like, oh my God, if that was in Revit, you wouldn't have had to do that. Like it just, and I guess my question is in Revit, one of the powers and the curses of it, you can select all and change every single wall in your building from 2x4 to 2x6 or whatever. I mean, I'm just giving an example, also like my question was also about the schedules. It'll generate the schedules for you. You can phase the project, kind of like you were showing, you can have first phase, second phase, third phase, and every time it'll update for all the phases, depending on if you're, like your client says, hey, I can only build this part now. I mean, there's a lot of, flexibility that way, but I do think the drawings come out looking a lot better. I have a hard time controlling the graphics in Revit, but in terms of the power of the program, I just feel like a lot of the stuff that you've had to redo wouldn't happen in Revit. So
even I had to flip the house, like mirror it. Can you mirror a house in Revit?
Sure.
Like a sock, you stick your hand in and pull it out the other way. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, no, you can just say, mirror over a line, over a plane or whatever.
It'll always leave 2 or 3 objects behind that you have to go find, like some vanity you imported from somewhere won't mirror, but mostly you can mirror everything in one fell swoop. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, and you can also I was wondering if you can, for your walls and your wall types and all that, if you can give more detail, like in Revit, you can actually have a generic wall, which looks like what you guys are using with your rectangular tool, but you can have a 2x4, 2x6, or rigid on the outside or not, or whatever material. It gives, I don't know if is that available in SketchUp, or it's more like 6-inch wall or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
I wouldn't be surprised if it is available, Rachel, but I definitely get the point that you guys are making as far as Revit goes. I feel like there's some kind of sweet spot between flexibility and kind of like, oh, this intelligent program that tells you, that knows every layer in a wall assembly. And, I felt like this was a good kind of spot on that spectrum for me, doing single family residential. Like I'm not having to manage 10 different wall types, and I'm not having to kind of coordinate with a mechanical designer or whatever. So it felt like this is like a good sweet spot for single family residential, where the complexity is not at the level of, I'm not doing like a 5-story building where I have to kind of like do all these different things. The other question I wanted to ask you is how much does Revit cost?
Well, it's expensive. I think it was, well, now you have to get a subscription, but I think when I got it in the downtime, it was like 4,000, 5,000, because I traded in my AutoCAD, license.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have all different prices depending on what you're willing to give up.
Yeah.
What you trade in.
Well,
Andrew, I often say to people, the way I use Revit, because I do the same kind of work you do, the same kind of clients, I do feel a little bit like I've bought a Ferrari to run errands to the grocery store. Right? It is capable of way more multi-story work groups, detaching parts of a building or a site to assign to, your other office that's on the other side of the world. And then you link the models back. And I don't do any of that or even know how to do any of that. Well, I'm definitely like swimming in the shallow end with Revit, but it is nice. It's nice because it does all of the anticipating what you intend, like you were saying with SketchUp, but it goes further. It's just like more powerful. Though I would add as a warning to anyone who's playing with both, the fact that Revit can do really complex modeling, like every layer in a wall or a roof assembly, I was taught early on to avoid that if possible, because it makes the model really thick. There's way more calculations for it to do, and it slows everything down. So what I was taught is you keep your model as simple as you can for as long as you can, and then you add those layers of complexity just when you need them and where you need them. Otherwise, you'll find that when you try to rotate the thing, you know, everything will seize up and it'll take a long time. It'll choke. It also has, like, in any given model, even if you have all those layers, you don't have to look at them. There's views from coarse through fine. So I could have a wall that has 5 layers in it because I want to do energy analysis, but I can just draw, I can represent it and work on it in coarse view, which looks just like yours. It looks just like SketchUp. It's just a post-shade 6-inch thick wall.
And
Yeah,
your
just
drawings looked really nice. I mean, your
Yeah.
drawings, when you presented at the Small Firms Forum, a set of drawings,
Yeah.
and that looked really good, like nicely rendered. I mean, it didn't look like an AutoCAD drawing. It could have been Vectorworks or SketchUp, or actually SketchUp. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking to me about Revit?
Yeah, Kurt. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so again, there's choices. I'm sure, you know, Rachel knows this. There's choices like levels at which, and I'm no great renderer or material specialist or any of that. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
again,
Sorry,
it's the
Angie.
Ferrari. I barely have a grip on the steering wheel of this thing when it gets going. But you do have the freedom to sort of use it in a way that's simple. It offers things like sketchy lines and line overlaps and stuff that'll make your model look a little more like the SketchUp models that you were showing. And it'll do shadows, of course.
I think
Andrew,
Donald's been waiting for a while.
The what?
I thought
Yeah, I'll shut up.
I thought you guys are not weird enough, so I thought I would share a little bit of my approach. I have been using Form Z for 30 years, and I really love it. I'm not sure it's more capable than Revit, but at this point, there's too much of an investment and too short of a career left. But the thing that I wanted to mention was that I don't have any interest in having the 3D portion of the model become a big part of the project when we get into the construction drawing phase. I will use some things from the 3D model, like if I have modeled the building on the exterior, I may take renderings of the exterior, existing exterior or whatever, and use those as a basis for the elevations. But the construction drawings that I do are very real world precise, and it's very hard to make a 3D model understand that in the design phase. And so I find that the 3D model utility for me is basically at the level of helping someone understand what the building will look like. So that could be a planning department when you're going in for a planning permit, or it can be the client. But once you get beyond that and you're getting to the point where you're trying to create a book of instruction for somebody to construct the thing, I don't have any use for the 3D model. But I did have a question. Kirsten, you said that SketchUp is subscription only nowadays, and my programs, Vectorworks and Form Z, are like subscriptions. There's an annual fee, and for the annual fee, you get any software updates and technical support. But if I were to stop either of those subscriptions at any time, I would continue to have full access to the software that I had used and the models that I made. Is that the same with SketchUp, or if you cancel the subscription, do you lose access to your models?
I don't know the answer because I was totally intent to get the classic version. So I have the classic, which I mean, I bought the software the way it is right now, and I'm going to use it until I decide that it's too outdated and I need to get a subscription. I think when you get a subscription and if you discontinue it, you just have it for that year. And then there are free SketchUp Viewers. So you can still look at your models, but
So you can't continue to use the software. Some other companies are doing this. I think Adobe products, kind of, some of them work on that model too. But I kind of like the idea that if I have a 3-year-old piece of software on a computer with a 2-year-old operating system or something like that, and I don't want to continue, I can continue to have the original functionality that I paid for.
I agree with that, and I would not be using AutoCAD if Vectorworks had better backwards compatibility, because most of my drawings that I have and details are actually in Vectorworks. But if I buy a current version, I cannot access my old files. I have to buy intermittent versions like every 3 years to backwards be able to look at them. And that's what I would not be doing any of this if Vectorworks offered that.
Vectorworks will read files back to 2007 is what they told me. But I have Vectorworks files, which were then MiniCAD files that go back to 1990. So it's a funny thing. Those of us who once had pencil drawings that would last for 50 or 100 years went through a phase in the early days of computer CAD when what we did is no longer, you can no longer look at it. You don't know what it was.
All of us seem to be of a certain age here in this little Zoom screen. I would just put a vote in for thinking more about the future than the past. I would not get too married to old ways of working or old versions of software, because it's moving forward with or without us. And I think you're better off trying to tune into whatever the latest tendency is, and use it in a way that it helps you advance your work. I don't know. That's what I did to myself anyway. I was like, I got to be good at this, and I have to stay current, and I have to pay whatever the subscription is, and I got to make sure I just keep learning it. Otherwise, just slip behind.
I want to, Kurt, you always have good comments, and I want to respond to that. I personally wish that we were all still drawing on vellum with ink. I mean, I hate dealing with computer interfaces, but the reason why I'm doing SketchUp is that I just found it is really more focused on the thing that you're designing as opposed to the tool you're using to design with. Like, I don't want to deal with umpteen layers and palettes and all that, all that interface gets in the way. It gets between what you and what you're trying to design. And SketchUp, literally you can do a ton of stuff with like 4 or 5 commands.
Yeah.
And that's really what I liked about it. And again, for single family residential, like you said, you're driving a Ferrari, and it's cool because maybe one day you'll get a commission to design big building. But while you're doing single family residential, I feel like this is a good option. And Donald, I wanted to kind of respond to your point about using Form Z, and once you get into construction documents, you want to work, in an exact way. And I hope you guys don't mind, but I'll take the liberty of sharing my screen again for a second. I just brought up this guy's website, who is the guy I mentioned up in, I think, Truckee. And he does these whole sheets of details that are all 3D. And he builds this library of little, details that show, different assemblies. And, again, once you have this built, you build it once and then you can use it over and over, just like a CAD library.
That actually wouldn't work for me. A completely different way of detailing. The other weirdness is that I combine the architectural and the structural drawings. So the detailing is very project specific, and it includes information that a lot of times architects don't include.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I really liked it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, that was good. Andrew, I think you made a double argument. I think you argued for going back to hand drawing, and then you put up an example of, of how handy it is to embrace the newest technology.
Well, I don't think I'm going to win in my campaign to get all of us to go back to using ink on vellum. So, short of that, I think this is a good solution.
I used to erase until I destroyed the vellum.
Right.
Like, I love the infinite ability to cut and paste and modify and have it always be like clean and presentable. I like destroyed my drawings practically when I had to revise.
I actually, it's funny that Kirsten and I are giving this presentation. I have actually seriously debated about whether to basically go back to hand drafting.
You did?
I have.
Wow.
Because I find that I just enjoy my day a lot more when I'm drawing by hand. Even with SketchUp, like I didn't get into this profession to look at a computer screen.
Yeah.
I love drawing by hand, and it's just so loose, and you don't have to like deal with like some tool to modify the line weight. You just press down harder, or you grab a different pencil.
Right.
And again, for single family residential, yeah, the computer gives you some things, but I don't know. I just like that idea of putting lead on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I would have
Romantic.
I would have Kurt's problem, because sometimes I like to take this detail and move it a little bit more to the left to make room here. And that's a fraction of a second in the computer. And
I love it.
it's all morning on pencil.
Love it. So Andrew, I think yours and Kirsten, actually, I think of both of you as kind of artists. Your work is very, has like a beauty and a delicacy to it that's really lovely and maybe gets lost in computers. I was never that good at drawing to love it as much as you do or be as good at it. And I take my role as being, my job isn't really to create a beautiful drawing. My job is to get something beautiful built, whether that's by me or by the contractor, because I used to build them too. But my job is just to get this thing in in a client's head so they love it and feel like it's what they want. And then in a contractor's head so they can bring it into fruition in the real world. And I find that I paste a lot of like photos into my drawings, and I'm making collages sometimes. And the computer allows me to model without getting out cardboard and X-Acto knives. So like sort of like whatever it takes to compile a set of instructions to get the real thing built, to me becomes an argument where the computers start to pull ahead, especially of my drawing skills. So I love them. I love them. I feel very creative using the computer and far less frustrated than I did with cardboard and paper and pencil.
Thanks for the kind words, Kurt.
Oh, your stuff's beautiful. Yeah, and Kirsten, you guys you're great designers. Your work is beautiful. Yeah, it's really nice.
Mercedes, you've got your hand up.
I do, yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask about coordinating with draftspeople and whether or not you I know a lot of offices will do their details in 2D, even if they have a 3D component or some aspect of that. But how does it export to AutoCAD, for example? And what's your experience with coordinating with others on your drawings with this?
It's not bad. You can export a SketchUp model into DWG files. All the line work shows up on 0 layer. If I send a CAD file that's exported from my SketchUp model to an engineer, they're going to see something different than if I was working in CAD already. It's all going to be on 0. So there's not any clue as to what a particular line is other than they can read a plan. There's not like a line that says AN-wall or something. It's all on 0. But typically when I send my drawings to an engineer I'm working with, I will include a PDF so they can refer to it to understand. If there's something that's not apparent in the DWG, they can just look at the PDF version and it'll be apparent there. So there's not really any friction there. I don't think it's no additional time.
Okay.
That sounds similar to when I used to work on Vectorworks, and if I had to send things to the structural engineer in DWG, the line weights get kind of off. I mean, it's all on one layer, or you have to decide and you have to take the scales out to make it all. I don't, this might have been simplified by now, but I've talked to a structural engineer about it before I decided what to do, and they said they don't care. They use them as backgrounds anyways. They don't really need the line weights.
Mm.
And what about working with draftspeople and coordinating with them?
So I have 2 assistants, one of whom is, still at a very basic level of SketchUp work, Mercedes, but I'm trying to get her trained on SketchUp and layout.
Okay.
And you can also, I have AutoCAD still on my computers. I can always switch to AutoCAD if I want to do a little detailed drawing and then, paste it back into a layout file.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you, when you paste AutoCAD back into layout, do you do it as a PDF, or do you bring it in as a DWG?
I think you can, that's a good question, Kristen. I was just thinking of literally printing it out and scanning it and inserting it as a JPEG.
Because you
But
could
I
bring it
think
as a DWG into the model space. Somewhere in your model, you could have an area.
you can do that. You can do that. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank
It was
you.
really nice presentation, beautiful drawings. Just a heads up that we've got confirmation now that David Garcia, who's the policy director at the Turner Center, is going to talk to us next month on 3 bills pending in the state legislature regarding housing and using commercial properties, for example, to change zoning so that commercial properties could be used for housing, for mid-rise type middle income housing. And also some legislation, which I'm not sure about, which is about also single family residential housing. So anyway, that's next month.
That's really cool. Will you have an announcement pretty soon? Because I'm on the homes tour, and we're doing focus on shelter this year, and there's a lot of talk about housing. So we're working together with the Housing Forum and also with the Regional and Urban Design Forum to just promote, to just have the AIA. We're doing, have a focus on housing and like what do they call it? The missing middle. Like,
It's for middle. It's for the middle.
Okay, so I would like to tell people about it as soon as you have some sort of announcement.
Well, the deadline's tomorrow, so
All
it will be
right.
good.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your guys' presentation. I've always been curious about SketchUp, and doing this ACE program, this after-school program for high school kids interested in architecture, construction, and engineering. They a lot of times use SketchUp, but I feel very inadequate because I don't know the program. And it was really helpful to see how you manipulate, like both Kirsten and Andrew manipulate the program. So now I feel like I could be more of an educator. So thank you so much.
Glad it helps. We were happy to do it.
Andy, you did awesome. I really loved that. If I hadn't started it, I would want to start it now.
Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay, how do we stop this? What do we do? Say goodbye. We lost
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Thank you
get some
very
lunch,
much.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.